people told the Toronto Star you were a loner who doesn't mix well with the rest of cabinet.
Politics, as I say, it's a contact sport.
Welcome back to CBC News Sunday Night. In early December, Liberals will choose their new leader, the person they hope will be able to take the country back from Stephen Harper's Conservatives. There are 8 contenders for the Liberal leadership. Tonight, we continue our series of interviews with the front-running candidates. Here is Gerard Kennedy. A former food bank executive and Minister of Education, Gerard Kennedy is the youngest of the 4 top candidates. He's 46 and a university dropout. In delegate support, he ranks 3rd, behind Bob Rae and frontrunner Michael Ignatieff. Kennedy doesn't speak French as well as Ignatieff or Rae, certainly not as well as Quebec native Stéphane Dion. His claim on leadership ability comes from his time as the executive director of food banks in Edmonton and in Toronto. This isn't the first time Kennedy's run for the leadership of a party. In 1996, he ran against Dalton McGuinty for the leadership of the Ontario Liberal Party. He lost on the 5th ballot. In government, his experience comes from his time as Ontario's Minister of Education, which he gave up in order to run for the federal leadership. Kennedy is widely credited with bringing labor peace to the government in its volatile relationship with the teachers' unions. Running a couple of food banks, including the largest one in the country, education minister in opposition. What about that qualifies you to be leader of this country?
Well, I think it qualifies me because I've accomplished something. I've got a track record of success, of galvanizing people, of bringing them together.
What's your biggest success so far?
Well, I think getting the school system turned around in Ontario. I think we had a 25% approval rating. It went up to 65%.
What was the result? What was the result you achieved?
We got test scores up by 20 points within 3 years, after 5 years of no increases. We got the dropout rate down for the first time in 25 years. We got 4-year contracts with teachers and largely with other education workers after 25 million lost days under the previous government. And so I see myself as a catalyst for that. I give credit to the people in the system for wanting to do that, and I just unlocked that. And that's what's possible in government. There is no reason to have an excuse about not getting things done or not the federal government, for example, being relevant in people's lives. There are things that can happen. And I learned at the food bank, look, if you're responsible for getting food for 150,000 people at the time of their worst emergency, you get practical in a hurry. I'm only interested in the public realm for what it can deliver for people, and I've got a track record of doing that. I think it's what we have to have in this country.
What are you going to promise? What are you promising that Canadians can touch and feel?
Well, for example, new immigrants, an immigrant success gap that actually closes every year, that the gap between what new immigrants with the same education and same experience earn and Canadian-born has to be fixed. They're earning less in terms of salary after 10 years in the country than they did in 1980 relative to Canadian-born. 1 in 6 new immigrants is going back in the first year, and not very far from where we sit, there are 2,000 people with PhDs, almost all of them foreign trained, who use food banks in the city of Toronto.
Why do you think that is?
Well, it is because we have not kept pace. We've invited more talented people. We haven't worked out the path for them to be able to be successful.
Why haven't we done that?
We need a mentor program. We need to help with language adjustment, even in the country of origin. We haven't done it because immigration has been seen as a side issue. It affects those who immigrate. But right now, 2011, the only growth in the workforce is going to come from immigration, and we need to be better at it. We need to become the country that we think we are, that really respects people. Multiculturalism was a good program for its day, but it was based on tolerance, and that's not good enough. Respect, really understanding where people are coming from and making a place for them is what the new Canada has to be.
What do you think is forefront in Canadians' minds right now in terms of what's going on in our country?
Well, you know, there may not be a totally emerging issue, but if I had to summarize about our identity, I think people look and wonder what's going on in Afghanistan. Which Canada is it? Is it the Canada that is, you know, simply an ally of the United States, or is it Canada with an independent voice and independent perspective? Because I think that troubles people deeply. We've lost 42 lives at least in terms of service people, another diplomat. And are we serving Canadian principles there? I think people are confused.
What do you think? Are we serving
No, we're not. We're not. We're not in a mission that can
Shouldn't
succeed.
be there?
We should change that mandate to fit our principles, and we should be aggressive and effective at getting NATO to focus on what will work. But we are not there for any reason but to build a civil society. If we're not accomplishing that, if we're simply occupying a troublesome part of the world, we should leave. And we should do that with our head held high, because we have accomplished some short-term security at some significant cost. But if young Canadian men and women are going to be at risk, it had better be for reasons we really believe in.
Would you pull the troops?
If we can't get a change in the mandate to fit Canadian principles, then I would bring the troops back with honor sometime after February 2007.
Do you want to lurch the Liberal Party to the left? Are you a lefty?
You know what my answer to that is that it's not left or right, it's forward. And we need forward in this country. I believe, for example, in what I call an enterprising liberalism, actually taking some of those risks, setting targets, but I want to see our private sector.
For example, give me a target set, 50% of women. Let's take that one.
Well, I mean, that's just 50% of women in Parliament, and that's internal to politics, where we can no longer say to young women or to anyone an excuse as to why we wouldn't achieve that. And so it's a question of organizing our party in a much different way to eliminate some of the barriers and provide some of the supports that will create a level playing field.
So what are you saying? You'll only allow some ridings will be designated for women only?
As the leader, I'm saying within 2 or 3 elections, I'm going to appoint half women to cabinet. So you want to send me a good supply.
Do you speak French well enough to run this country?
Bien sûr. Yeah, I think I do. I think I speak French well enough to understand Quebecers. It's never been an issue in the travels that I've had in Quebec in terms of being able to talk with people. I'm not as elegant as some others, but this is a leadership contest. It's not a language contest. There is a point and a threshold that has to be achieved. So which do you want? Do you want someone whose French is a little more elegant, or someone who's very committed to the bilingual, bicultural nature of this country and is going to make it happen to a level of practical success, which is the further step that we need?
You want to be the leader of this party, yet in terms of fundraising, in terms of delegate selection, you trail behind Bob Rae and Michael Ignatieff. How are you going to get there?
Well, I'm going to get there by attracting more delegates than they do on the final ballot. I've been in a leadership race before. I was on the being in first place is not inevitable, and I'm proof of that. I won 4 ballots and lost in the 5th. It all depends of who really can drive the consensus, and I want to forge that consensus.
Are you forging an alliance with Stéphane Dion?
I have no formal relationships or arrangements with anyone. And,
no formal agreement with Stéphane Dion?
No, and you know,
But you tried to get one?
No, I've not tried for any arrangement in terms of the leadership. I think what I've tried to do, and I continue to do, and I'll be doing, later on today, is talking to the delegates.
Has anybody sent you a note across the room that they would like to partner up with you?
I haven't had that formal an offer from anybody, and just as I haven't had their resignation or their assignment of their delegates to me.
Because if they walk with you, you're the one that gets to walk up the aisle.
Well, perhaps.
Off the record, though, in late September, people told the Toronto Star you were a loner who doesn't mix well with the rest of cabinet. Prickly.
Well, there are a few people who aren't in my camp, and politics, as I say, it's a contact sport. Everyone's entitled to their opinions. I don't put myself forward as...
Are you prickly?
Well, I stand up for what I believe in. People are actually fighting pretty hard to make sure that the best thing prevails. And so I'm happy to have served there, and I'm happy to have a reputation as somebody who has gotten things done. And if along the way getting some of those things done, some people thought I was a little prickly, I don't mind that.
Gerard Kennedy. That was an edited version of a much longer interview I did with Gerard Kennedy this past week. You can find the transcript of the entire interview on our website, www.cbc.ca/Sunday.